This year, we are going to finish the Pokemon Yellow tier list. One task involved in that process is re-ranking a bunch of the Pokemon that I have previously played on the channel, but I don't think their results really hold up to today's standards. One of the reasons that that's the case is that some of these Pokemon were played so long ago that I was not yet doing 2 playthroughs per Pokemon, and Rattata is one of those species. Over the course of November, I am going to complete all of the re-ranks that I need to do, as well as some other Pokemon that I still have not yet played. I'm thinking about you, Dodrio. I'm really excited about that run. By the time we reach the last week of this month, there will only be 5 videos left, and then at the end of December, every single Pokemon will be ranked in Pokemon Yellow. I have truly reached the end game of this project. After more than half a decade, I am ready to see this tier list finally complete. So today, let's re-rank Rattata. If you're curious how my first playthrough with it went, please go and watch the previous video. In this video, I'm going to be doing analysis of my final playthrough with it after I came back and did 3 more this year. Also, huge shout out to Zealouspawn for his help optimizing Rattata. I took tons of his advice, and I made a few changes along the way just to make this route a little bit more consistent. After all, I've got to stay on brand. However, there are some inconsistencies in the late game that I will talk about. I don't really see a way around them. They're pretty brutal. Anyways, let's get into the run. The first choice to be made with Rattata is which level to fight Brock at, and Rattata's level up move pool essentially decides this for you. It starts with Tackle and Tail Whip learns Quick Attack at level 7 and Hyper Fang at 14. Hyper Fang paired with Tail Whip gives you an easy way to beat Brock, so we have to fight him at level 14. It doesn't make sense to train one level higher to 15 for the damage rounding threshold. Hyper Fang at 14 is more than enough. So simply the early game is a question of how can we get to level 14 as fast as possible, and the easiest way is fighting 3 bug catchers in the forest. Bug catcher number 1, bug catcher number 15, which is the yellow version exclusive. I'm skipping the guy with 2 Metapod just because he can be kind of slow when using physical attacks at a low level. After that, the mandatory bug catcher, and then I head into Pewter City to do blackout training against the junior trainer. Defeating the Diglett and then losing to the Sandshrew 11 times in a row gives me enough experience to defeat the junior trainer and level to 14, getting Hyper Fang before Brock. Just one small detail here, when I defeat the junior trainer, I don't go back to the Pokemon Center. I don't need to heal here. Instead, I can just use a potion and then fight Brock right away. I'm also not saving in front of Brock, which is a small difference between Zealouspawn and I. He was playing this run and he was accepting resets on Brock, but I decided not to. The early game is fairly quick, and Brock is pretty consistent with Rattata. Against the Geodude, 2 Tail Whips gives Hyper Fang a damage range of 48 to 59%. This is a 74% chance to 2-hit due to accuracy and the sometimes bad damage rolls. That said, it's good enough. Then against the Onix, the only thing we're hoping for is that it goes for Bide fairly early into the battle. If it does, then I have more time to set up with Tail Whip, because I'm going to go all the way lowering Onix's defense to -6. Once that's done, I use Hyper Fang and it is dealing massive damage. Enough to confidently 2-shot the Onix. There are only 2 ways that Rattata can fail here. Once again, accuracy, and then if it gets a critical hit, it will actually deal less damage. Still, Brock could just use Bide over and over again, or use Screech, or miss Bind, or miss Tackle. His Onix overall is pretty inconsistent. In this case, it was annoying using Bind a lot, and it brought me down to low HP at the beginning of the fight. Here's the thing, I'm not scared, because he can just fail at any point during the battle. He hits one more tackle, bringing Rattata down to 4 hit points, and my final Hyper Fang takes out his ace. So I get myself a Brock split of 7 minutes and 45 seconds. In this run, I'm going to be comparing my splits against the splits that I got from the first run back with Rattata this year. I finished the game with it in that run with a time of 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 15 seconds. So that's the time to beat. But I also want to talk about the previous time I got with Rattata on the channel, since it is significantly worse, and I think it shows how much growth I've had overall during this series. Because a long time ago when I played Rattata, its time was 1 hour, 31 minutes, and 9 seconds. I had 8 resets, finished the game at level 74 with a game time of 5 hours and 41 minutes. In today's playthrough, I'm going to crush all of these metrics with only one exception. On Route 3, I fight the bug catcher instead of the last for a little bit more experience. Inside Mount Moon, I pick up the TM for Water Gun. Normally, when I teach this to a Pokemon, I want to have it so that I can knock out the Hiker's Pokemon for more experience inside this location, but that's not the reason for Rattata. Rattata. Instead, I skip all optional trainers here, fighting only the 2 mandatories at the end of the cave, and then I head directly into Cerulean City. This is another location where Zealous Pawn chose to play a little bit more conservatively than I was. I am not saving for the rival on Nugget Bridge, although this fight can go very wrong, and I would see why someone would want to save here. After all, the late game for Rattata is the part of the game that is most inconsistent, so Zealous Pawn's theory was with this playthrough that you just want to complete as many runs as is possible. That way you have more chances to roll the dice in the late game and get a really exceptional result. The early game just doesn't affect Rattata's results as much as the late game RNG can. By the way, it's worth stating that I was saving for this battle in my first 2 playthroughs, but by the time I got to the 3rd one, I was starting to push for greatness, and I had also not had very many problems here. Even if the Sandshrew does lower my accuracy because I have to 3-shot with Water Gun, it still doesn't always turn out badly, since I have really good damage ranges against the following Rattata as well as the Eevee. Plus, they're not always very confident, sometimes just spamming status moves until I knock them out. And also, Rattata's critical hit rate is fairly high, roughly 14%. Because of that, I score a crit on the Eevee and I knock it out in a single hit with Hyper Fang. With Water Gun on Rattata's set, I can fight the Seismic Toss Hiker for slightly more experience than the Junior Trainer. As I'm saving Bill from his freaky experiment, I want you to look at my experience bar. I am about to level up to 23 over a damage rounding threshold. This is a key moment in the playthrough, and I think there's a major choice to be made here. The first option available to Rattata is going directly to Misty, fighting the Junior Trainer, leveling up to 23, and then battling her now. The other choice is going to the SSN, leveling up to 25 over 2 damage rounding thresholds, and then backtracking to fight Misty after getting access to Body Slam. The disadvantage of going to the SSN first is that you're going to bleed time because you have to backtrack to Vermilion City to fight Surge after Misty. So the time that you waste is how long it takes you to walk from Cerulean City back to Vermilion City, where you're going to cut the tree. I timed this out and it's roughly 10 seconds. By the way, if you take a single reset to Misty, it will waste roughly 15 seconds if you lose early into the battle, but if you have a little bit of a longer battle and then she say crits with Bubble Beam, you'll waste even more time. Here are the damage ranges that Zealous Pawn has against her at level 23. Hyper Fang has a 68.2% chance to one-shot the Staryu, which it outspeeds. Then against the Starmie, Hyper Fang does between 42 and 51% damage. But the thing that really scared me here is Bubble Beam's damage range, 61 to 71% damage, with a guaranteed knockout should it critical hit. As you can see in this run, I am choosing to go to Surge first, but I'm going to continue talking about the level 23 strategy since I think it deserves examination. And if you want to get the best possible early game time with this little rat, I do think that level 23 is definitely the way to go. The lost conditions are missing the damage range on Staryu and then moving on to Starmie. If it goes for 1 Water Gun and 1 Bubble Beam in any combination, then you're going to lose. You could still potentially win from here though. Misty can use an X-Defend to replace one of her turns of attack, and Rattata could critical hit the Starmie, doing massive damage. You might be wondering about Hyper Fang's damage range if you were looking closely. It's 42 to 51% at level 23. This doesn't seem good enough. It's only a 21.8% chance to 2-shot, but this doesn't matter since we have access to Quick Attack. So if we miss the 2-hit range, we can just fall back to the priority move. That said, the numbers here just weren't quite good enough for me, especially with a run that is really inconsistent in the late game. I've taken my chances not saving against Brock or the rival in the early game. In this case, I am going to play slightly more conservatively, because getting access to Body Slam in level 25 completely changes the fight against Misty. Body Slam has a guaranteed 1 hit on the Staryu and a guaranteed 2-shot on the Starmie. Plus, I have 30% upside for paralysis, and Bubble Beam is doing less damage now. Plus, the Staryu is never going to attack. Also, if the Starmie critical hits with Bubble Beam, there is a chance that Rattata will survive. Now, saving the game in Pokemon Yellow takes somewhere between 4 and 5 seconds of time. This is roughly half the amount of time that I spend walking back to Surge after fighting Misty with the more conservative strategy. So instead of chancing a reset and doing a save, I am just doing the more conservative play and not saving in front of Misty. Yes, I can still lose, but in the course of these 3 playthroughs using this strategy, I didn't fail against her once. This one was really close, water gun followed by bubble beam, leaving Rattata on 4 hit points. I knock out the Starmie and earn myself the second badge. Okay, here's the backtracking time to Surge so that you can see it yourself. This lasts for 10 seconds, and then I'm back to the cut tree, which is where I would have been anyway. Before Surge, I take my first save in the entire playthrough. This is maybe playing overly safe, since during all of my practice and these 3 runs that I completed, Surge also did not win a single time. The trainers I was losing to in the early game was Brock and Rival 2. Brock was maybe 1 in 5 fights that I was losing, and Rival 2 was much more frequent. Sand Attack is just so good in Generation 1. The reason I'm saving is because I'm pretty far into the playthrough by this point, and if Raichu goes for Thunderbolt, it deals enough damage to knock Rattata out even without a critical hit. It will always one-shot, so as soon as I see the text that he used Thunderbolt, I immediately have to reset. Also, Dig doesn't have a guaranteed one-hit on the Raichu, and at our current level, 26, we are not going to move first. Plus, there is even more downside here. If Dig rolls bad damage, and then I roll bad damage with Quick Attack following it, the Raichu can still survive and attack again. This did happen to me during my playthroughs, although not in this run. I also just want to note the character development here, because Quick Attack has been a move I have consistently forgotten in these playthroughs, as well as moves like Swift and Feint Attack to bypass accuracy checks, especially when I've been hit by accuracy lowering moves. Anyways, I go for Quick Attack and Raichu goes down. That's the 3rd badge. As I reorder my bag, let's talk about Rattata's moveset for the next section of the game. Right now it has Body Slam, Bubble Beam, which was a replacement for Water Gun, Dig, as well as Quick Attack. But I'm going to replace Quick Attack now with Thunderbolt. Sometimes it makes sense holding off on teaching this move until later into the run, but with Rattata, its move pool is decently small, and I think using it right now is definitely the best choice. Body Slam has 1-hits on all of the Wrapping Lasses Pokemon, so she isn't an issue. Bubble Beam is helpful against the Pokemaniac's Cubone, and Thunderbolt helps for the Slowpoke. Either Bubble Beam or Water Gun or Dig would be good enough for the self-destructing hiker, but I like Bubble Beam just because it has less turns when compared with Dig. Also, going underground and then having one of his Pokemon, especially the Graveler, set up Defense Curl can waste more time or expose you to risks of critical hits from self-destruct. That's always a really painful way to lose this fight. With Bubble Beam, there is no such risk. On Route 9, we need to start doing our mid-game training. I'm going to fight this Super Nerd, who I lovingly call the Van Man Super Nerd, since he routed this trainer into his Parasect playthrough all those years ago. Then, of course, Rattata is going to complete the Rocket Hideout to get 1 extra rare candy. I will be collecting all 12 rare candies in this playthrough, so that also includes the Power Plant candy. And that's because there is some synergy to going to the Power Plant, which I'll mention later on. For vitamins, I'm going to be purchasing myself 2 Carbos. This is a discovery from Zealous Pawn, and it is very important for near the end of the game. The rival in Pokemon Tower is extremely simple for Rattata. I have moves that are exceptionally strong against all of his team members, and then the Chandler that follow aren't issues because I have Dig. Next is optional training on Cycling Road. The Grimy Biker is first, and as soon as I defeat him, I save the game, because the Wheezing Biker that follows can be problematic for Rattata. Honestly, this guy is better than Surge in this playthrough, and you get to see it here because he poisons me early into the fight. Because of this and the fact that I have to use Dig, plus his Pokemon are not going down to a single super effective hit, this allows him to slowly take an advantage, and I do misplay here slightly not going for Dig one more time. Because of that, he is able to defeat me and I take my first reset. But it's not wasting that much time. Again, the late game is where all the RNG is, so I'm going to continue playing towards that, especially because my early game was very smooth. I finish my training against the Biker boss, and then I head through the Safari Zone. On my way, I'm going to pick up every vitamin that is available to me. This is the case for all overworld vitamins throughout this playthrough, with the exception of the iron in Cinnabar Mansion, as well as any HP ups that I come across. Those ones just aren't useful. Alright, time for Silph. I'm going to summarize every single trainer here, as well as the route to get to them, because initially I was playing this by going to the 10th floor, fighting the Machoke Candy guy, and then picking up the items there. After that, I would go down through all the floors, fighting trainers sequentially. But this actually makes things more difficult for Rattata, and it wastes more time. When I compared my splits with Zealous Pawn's mid-game splits, I noticed that I was losing about 2 minutes around this section of the game, and I couldn't figure out why. Turns out it was my training here in Silph. If you fight rockets starting on the lowest floors, you're going up against Pokemon that are generally easier to knock out. This guy with 5 Pokemon, 3 Zubat, 1 Golbat, and 1 Raticate is pretty good to start training on. Also, this delays all of the really scary people like the Hypno Rocket until later into Silph when you're a higher level. After him, I fight the mandatory trainer with Arbok and get myself the card key. Then I fight the trainer called the Triantist, who has 3 Pokemon after the warp pad to get to the card key, the scientist just north of that warp pad, and then I start journeying up the stairs. On the next floor up, I go right immediately, fighting the grimy scientist through the warp pad. After going back through the warp pad, the stacked scientist is also on this floor, so I fight him. His experience yields are incredible, probably the best trainer in this entire location. Heading up to the next floor, there is a trainer with 4 Pokemon who's great, as well as a Calcium, which will really help with late game damage ranges. The floor above, there is a Rocket with 4 Pokemon, as well as a Rocket with 3 Pokemon, both of which give good experience yields. And then finally, I take on the Machoke Candy, as well as the Hypno Rocket. I'm fighting him last, not because it's most efficient, but just because I'm most scared of him. I was right to be scared because he defeats me, giving Rattata its second reset. I know to save in front of this guy. I learned that very early into my Pokemon Yellow playthroughs. That's also why he was one of the first trainers to get art on the channel, because he is just so fantastic. Fighting him last also has another advantage, because I can unlock this door and then heal my Pokemon before heading back down the tower in order to fight the rival. Prior to him, I'm going to use 4 rare candies to level Rattata up to 45 over 2 damage rounding thresholds. This does not guarantee success against the rival, things can still go really wrong here. Bubble Beam has a 26.6% chance to 2-shot the Sand Slash, exposing me to both massive damage from Slash or a Sand Attack, which is by far the worst way for the fight to start. And I only have a 44.9% chance to 1-shot the Magneton. But once I get there, I've won the fight, unless I get a Gen 1 miss. By the way, it does sometimes happen where you get a Gen 1 miss on the last Pokemon in a battle, and because of that, you end up taking an extremely painful reset. Don't worry, that doesn't happen in this fight. I can 1-shot the Kadabra and 1-shot the Flareon. With the rival out of the way, I am now 1 minute and 23 seconds ahead of my former time, which is not a massive improvement. I had a slightly better Brock and then a much better rival too, but after that, the time differences have only incrementally improved. Because of this, I decided to play the next fight a little bit risky. I don't save going into the fight against Erika. She can win because I only have a 62.5% chance to 1-shot the Gloom with Body Slam. If it goes for Sleep Powder and then follows up with Petal Dance, there is the potential for disaster here. That said, I wanted to continue gaining time advantages over my previous run, so that's why I'm deciding to play this a little bit more risky. I get a lucky critical hit on her Gloom, so it goes down, and as a result, I now have a 1 minute and 46 second lead over my previous time. That's a big improvement. Outside of her gym, I want to mention another difference between how Zealouspawn and I played this run. I'm going to fly back to Saffron City now because I forgot to pick up the TM for Mimic right after I beat Giovanni. For Zealouspawn, there is no potential for him to make this mistake, because immediately after Giovanni, he instead grabs Mimic and then fights Sabrina. But for me, I thought that it was more consistent to fight her a little bit later into the playthrough. The reason I need to have Mimic is because it's going to be extremely useful against Koga. But before fighting him, I'm going to fight 2 optional trainers, the Tamers inside of his gym. I want to do this with Bubble Beam on my set so that I have better damage against the Sand Slash. With both of them defeated, then I replace this move for Mimic, which is great against Koga. From the first Venonat, I steal Sleep Powder, one of my favorite moves in this game. Then, I can put all of his Pokemon to sleep, avoiding annoying damage, and knock them out. At Rattata's current level with the Carbos from earlier, it is outspeeding the Venomoth, so there's essentially no risk here unless I'm missing moves. With him defeated, I am now 2 minutes faster than my previous time. Rattata is starting to build momentum throughout this section of the game. As I head south towards Cinnabar Island, we're going to cut out all the battles from this footage, but I'm instead going to show you the trainers' teams on the right-hand side of the screen so you know who I'm fighting and what their Pokemon are. Instead, what I want to illustrate during this section of the map is the path that I take in order to get to the optional trainers that I want to fight. I go straight down from Pallet Town and I bump into Psych, and then I can just go slightly over to the right and fight these 2 trainers, which have really good experience yields because they both have Tentacruel on their team. With them defeated, I go all the way to the right, bumping into the wall, and then surf down until I see a swimmer who is facing left. I fight him, and then I can go south and easily make it get onto Cinnabar Island. This allows me to dodge all of the sightlines of trainers, and I don't have to do intelligent pathing in the overworld. Plus, I think that it is the most step-efficient route through this area. If I went over to the left, which also avoids sightlines of trainers, I would then have to backtrack all the way to the right-hand side of the map, wasting a few additional steps. My last heal point was in Saffron City, and this is perfect for me, because when I dig out of Pokemon Mansion, I am taken back to this location, and then I can head into Sabrina's gym. I fight the Psychic inside the first chamber, then take the diagonal path fighting the Psychic inside the next chamber, diagonal path from here, then straight down, and I can fight Sabrina. I'm doing this after Koga, so I have the outspeed on the Kadabra. Unfortunately, even with Carbos, I am not able to move first against the Alakazam. I could have trained more levels, but they're not going to make the late game more consistent. I would need a significantly more extensive mid-game grind in order to pull that off. Still though, Sabrina in yellow is just not very good. The Alakazam goes for Psywave, and then she uses X-Defend, giving me a free 2-shot on her ace. I'm now 3 minutes and 14 seconds ahead of my previous time. This is going very well. Inside the Cinnabar gym, I need to fight one of 2 trainers, one of the first 2 people inside of the gym. By the way, the second person is obviously not the right choice, since all 3 of his Pokemon have quick attack, so they can do chip damage to you before facing Blaine, forcing you to use 1 additional potion. The other trainer doesn't have as many quick attack users, so the first trainer is better to fight, but both of them will do the same things in terms of experience rooting. This gets Rattata to level 53, and then I use 5 rare candies to go to level 58 prior to fighting the fire type specialist. The reason for candies prior to this fight is very simple. We just need good damage ranges against these Pokemon. Without the extra levels, Blaine is terrifying because you have to at least 2-shot all of his Pokemon. And typically the Arcanine's going to be a 3-hit because it loves to use Reflect. At level 58, I have a 58% chance to one-shot the Ninetales, a 71.4% chance to one-shot the Rapidash, and a 2-hit on the Arcanine. Still, this is typically not good enough to get through Blaine without 1 reset. I take 1 here because of a status condition, he burns me unfortunately, and I did lose to the Arcanine, wasting the maximum possible amount of time. But in the next fight, I'm able to pull through with a victory because the Arcanine's just kind of incompetent and I 2-shot with Dig. Giovanni is also a sketchy follow-up to Blaine. While Body Slam can one-shot his Dugtrio, I do not have good damage ranges from here on out, especially against the Rhydon. I need to use the double team Mimic strategy here from the Persian, and the biggest risk in the fight is the Persian consistently landing slashes against Rattata, and even Fury Swipes can be devastating if the Persian chooses to use Screech. Once my evasion is fully set up, I have guaranteed knockouts on the Persian and both Nidos, but the Rhydon will take 2 shots from Dig. If it hits with any of its attacking moves, I am likely going to lose. And this is the first reset in the playthrough that is truly painful, since losing to his final Pokemon after 6 turns of setup and 1 turn of Mimic is a really long battle. Yeah, I find it completely disgusting that the Rhydon was able to hit with Earthquake. Anyway, I beat him on my second attempt. This time it just tries Horn Drill, which obviously misses, and Earthquake, which does as well. Still, with Giovanni defeated, I am 3 minutes and 22 seconds ahead of my previous time. However, there's a little bit of an illusion going on here, because previously I was going to the power plant before Sabrina, but this time I'm going to go after Giovanni. The reason I'm coming to this location is to collect 2 items, the TM for Thunder, as well as the rare candy. I love how 5 years in, we are finding ways to use moves that I thought would be completely useless in solo challenges. The rival on Route 6 is actually really easy. Mimic Slash from the Sand Slash, then use it to knock it out, as well as the following Execute: Thunderbolt for Cloyster, Dig for Magneton, Slash for Kadabra, and Dig for Flareon. It might look like this fight is close, but it really isn't. My damage ranges here are just so good. In Victory Road, I fight 4 people. The Persian Cool Trainer, the Starter Cool Trainer, this Cool Trainer who I don't have a name for. I call him the Executor guy behind the scenes. He's usually sketchy to fight because all of his Pokemon are quite bulky and really scary. These are the Pokemon that we talk about in other battles causing problems. Blaine's Arcanine, Cloyster's everywhere throughout the playthrough, and then the champion's Executor. He does give really good experience yields though. Finally, I fight Cool Water, and that gives Rattata enough experience to be partway through level 62. This might not seem like the perfect level, but it's exactly what I need. Now, let's head into the Elite Four. Okay, so my previous 2 playthroughs got completely ruined when I arrived at Lorelei. I think that I was just getting really unlucky against her because as I consulted with Zealous Pawn, he kept telling me that she's really not that difficult with Rattata, and that made me so frustrated since I was losing to her like 6 to 8 times in each playthrough. However, I think I was just getting really unlucky in runs number 1 and 2 because in run 3 she's not that bad. The Cloister does get me the first time around with Spike Cannon with a critical hit, although there's nothing really I can do here since I have to 2-shot it as well as the Dugong. But once I make it through both of these Pokemon, then on Slowbro I can Mimic Amnesia, set up, and then Thunderbolt deals massive damage. I kept getting unlucky with the Slowbro in my previous runs. Actually, in one of the playthroughs it crit me twice in a row, which was so frustrating because crit rate is tied to base speed and Slowbro is incredibly slow. Anyway, this time around in my second fight I set up fully, then I knock out the Slowbro, the Jinx, and the Lapras and defeat Lorelei, taking a massive time lead over my previous playthrough. 5 minutes and 13 seconds. Okay, it is time to see a strategy that is theoretically allowed by my rules, but I have never once used in the past. Bruno's Hitmonchan knows Ice Punch, Thunder Punch, Fire Punch, and Double Team. My rules allow me to mimic moves from the enemy's Pokemon and then use them, even if those moves boost evasion. So in this case, I am using Mimic to steal Double Team from Hitmonchan. This is for 2 reasons. Number 1, my damage ranges against his Pokemon are not great, and number 2, the Machamp using Submission at the very end of the fight can be devastating, especially for a weak normal type Pokemon. Plus, the Hitmonchan is kind of incompetent, so setting up with Double Team here just makes this fight more consistent. I can't believe I actually had to talk about strategy here. Agatha's next, and this seems initially like it's going to be a really easy battle. Just use Dig against all of her Pokemon, knock them out, maybe Body Slam or Thunderbolt for the Golbat, and it should be straightforward for Rattata. And that is the case. This fight is very straightforward, and typically nothing can go wrong here. But then her first Gengar trolls me so much. It uses a bunch of Substitute, wasting time, confuses Rattata, I hit myself, it's just annoying in general using Mega Drain, healing, using Substitute again. At least it can't use Lick and paralyze me. Eventually I knock it out, sweep through the remainder of her team members, and then on the final Gengar I use Dig. My damage range here is very favorable. At level 64 I have a 78% chance to one-shot her ace. And then I Gen 1 miss. Following that, Gengar uses Psychic and Rattata faints. I think this is the most disgusting reset of all time. Don't worry, Agatha doesn't cause any problems the second time around. And no, because of my favorable damage ranges, I don't think that mimicking Substitute from the first Gengar is the correct play. I should just try to save time and sweep. Defeating her brings Rattata to level 65. This is key, because I can then use 3 rare candies to boost it up to level 68 over another damage rounding threshold. And this is where the run gets really sketchy, because the final 2 battles are really not favorable for Rattata. Because I am trying to beat the game at such a low level, I need moves that will deal better damage than my current set. So I'm going to teach Blizzard in the place of Thunderbolt, and then Thunder in the place of Dig. Without using Thunder, Rattata has a 14.1% chance to one-shot Lance's Gyarados. It's only if it gets a critical hit, and Hydro Pump is doing 67 to 79% damage. However, with Thunder, I have a 49.9% chance to one-shot the Gyarados. This is how a Pokemon can use a move that has low accuracy to improve its chances at a low level. Of course, leveling up and just using Thunderbolt at a higher level would be more consistent. But what level would be required to gain the same 50% chance to knock out the Gyarados? Well, Rattata would need to be level 75. That's 7 more levels of training to get the exact same coin flip against Lance. In stark contrast to how I used to play these games, it's just not worth it to do that. What I need here against Lance is to knock out the Gyarados in one hit and then move on with the battle. I don't have good damage ranges against the Dragonair, but the first one isn't that scary unless it goes for Thunder Wave. If it does, I'm going to reset right away because paralysis is unacceptable. Look at my current speed stat. The 2 Carbos, which I said were important for the late game, give me 1 more speed than Aerodactyl, ensuring that Rattata is going to move first, which is critical because I can use Mimic, steal Wrap from the second Dragonair, then knock it out using Wrap first Burst, followed by another move like Body Slam or Blizzard. I think Body Slam is more consistent, and I also got really lucky with Wrap in this case, taking it to low health. Then for the Aerodactyl, 4 turns of Wrap followed by Blizzard knocks it out, and 2 turns of Wrap followed by Blizzard knocks out the Dragonite. I was unlucky in my second battle against Lance because Wrap misses and Aerodactyl uses Hyper Beam, finishing Rattata. But in the second fight, the Wrap strategy works. I chip away at the Dragonite, giving me the range I need with Blizzard to finish it, avoiding damage. Even though I had 2 resets to Lance, my time has improved when compared with my Agatha split. I'm 10 seconds further ahead. Also, I am on track right now to finish the game with a sub-hour Rattata. That said, the champion is by far the most difficult battle in this entire playthrough, and I think all of you viewing this video are going to be pretty frustrated with the solution. Zealous Pawn actually apologized to me in his root file because he knew that I was also going to hate this strategy. Here's how it works. Turn 1, Blizzard on Sandslash, and we need to get either a critical hit or a freeze, or the Sandslash needs to use a useless move like Poison Sting or Fury Swipes. I get the critical hit right away, which is perfect. Then for Alakazam, I can use Body Slam, and I'm not always going to one-hit here. Sometimes I do, it's a very favorable damage range. I have a 64.7% chance to one-shot. I don't in this case, but Alakazam just goes for Kinesis, missing the status move, and I move on to Executor. This is where everything gets awful. I'm going to mimic Hypnosis, and then use it against the final 4 Pokemon on the champion's team. If I don't use it on Executor, then he can set up with Leech Seed and Hypnosis, causing Rattata so much pain. If I don't use it on Magneton, then he can hit me with Thunderbolt or paralyze me with Thunder Wave. If I don't use it on Cloyster, he can go for Clamp or Ice Beam, potentially freezing, or Aurora Beam, dropping my attack. And for Flareon, it could trap me with Fire Spin, finish me with Quick Attack if I'm on low health, or burn me with Flamethrower. The problem with this battle is that my damage ranges just aren't good enough to knock his Pokemon out quickly. Body Slam has a 2-shot on the Magneton. By the way, Dig would also have a 2-shot on Magneton, so mimicking Earthquake doesn't help my damage ranges here at all. It only exposes me to more damage against the Sandslash, and I didn't root Rest into this playthrough. For Cloyster, Thunderbolt would be a 2-shot, but Thunder is also a 2-shot. It's less consistent, yes, but I have a 54.9% chance to 2-shot with this move. And for Flareon, while Earthquake would have a 60.3% chance to 1-shot, I can just 2-shot with Body Slam with my current set. Unless I want to train to a much higher level for Lance, I don't think it makes sense to do this fight any other way. Hypnosis is just the solution. By the way, if I fought the champion at level 75, the same level that I was theory crafting on Lance at, I would not really improve my damage ranges. I would still have a chance to 3-shot the Executor. I'd be 2-shotting the Magneton using Body Slam, 2-shotting the Cloyster with the exact same % chance using Thunder, although Thunderbolt would be more consistent now, so I could just keep that move. And then against the Flareon, I would 2-shot with Body Slam unless I mimicked Earthquake. Really, the only Pokemon here that would be significantly changed is the Sandslash, since I would have an 80% chance to 1-shot using Blizzard. But 7 levels isn't worth it when you could luck through the champion. And while I have a bunch of resets because Blizzard is missing against Sandslash, eventually I pull it off. Hypnosis hits when it needs to, I finish the Cloyster, it hits against the Flareon, and then I finish it using Body Slam. With Rattata, I get a time of 59 minutes and 25 seconds, 5 minutes and 50 seconds ahead of my first run. I had 15 resets, 11 blackouts, I finished the game at level 69 with a game time of 3 hours and 33 minutes. I played the Hidden Oak fight after the champion, and I was really disappointed here because I lost a bunch, and then I realized that I just have to mimic Hypnosis from his Executor and then spam it on all of his other Pokemon. Another disappointing win for Rattata, but it's what it needs to do if it wants to win at a low level. And by taking this riskier path, if we look back years, my new Rattata run is more than half an hour faster than my previous one, which finished the game at level 74. I am really happy with this new time, but in the context of the tier list, it's still not great. Rattata only earns itself a position in the E tier, but I think it's notable which Pokemon are around it. Jolteon, Dragonair, Muk, Scyther, Executor, Electrode. It's a bunch of fully evolved Pokemon that don't perform particularly well, and then Dragonair Dragonair, which I guess is a pseudo-legendary middle form, which also doesn't perform very well. The slow growth rate really hurts it. As far as a first stage Pokemon goes, Rattata is not exceptional like something like Poliwag, but it is pretty good, especially when we consider that this is the Pokemon that you're supposed to catch on the very first route in the game. So well done, Rattata. And by the way, it can do slightly better because, as always, Zealous Pond was able to achieve a faster result than I was. But I think I might have been on track to beat his time or get very close to it until I got the Gen 1 miss to Agatha's Gengar. Still though, I'm really happy with this result for the rat. If you support me on Patreon or through YouTube memberships, thank you so much, it means the world to me. We've got a lot of stuff to re-rank in Pokemon Yellow, so stay tuned tomorrow when I come back to play Tangela, one of the worst fully evolved Pokemon in the game. If you've made it this far, you're incredible. I'll see you in my next video.